Vande Guru Paramparam. Om. We have now come to the study of the 6th chapter, starting from the verses 4 to 11. It is a great privilege to go back to the Bhagavad Gita again and again. And it is everyone's experience that each time you study the Gita, you get deeper insights. The deeper insights personally for me that if you have to really meditate, you have to work on possessions, obligations, relations, and transactions. Unless we work on the Bahiranga sadhana, that is what we are going to work on today. Bahiranga sadhanas are those preparatory processes that have to be done before you actually sit to meditation. Otherwise, the mind is not receptive for meditation. And toward the latter part, we will have the Antaranga sadhana or the actual steps for meditation. We will begin with Dr. Satyanarayana. Satyanarayana, are you ready?
Yes, sir. Ready, sir?
Please go ahead.
Yes, sir. The verse goes like this. Yada hi nenindriyarthesu na karmasu anusajjate sarva sankalpa sannyasi yoga rudhastada uchyate. The verse goes like this. So here, the meaning, if we get to know, yada hi nenindriyarthesu. See, indeed, see, indriya is sense objects. Na karmasu anusajjate. Karma is the one who is interested in the pursuits of the karma. So the one who is interested in sense objects or in their pursuits, those people have the renouncer, basically the sarva sankalpa sannyasi, the renouncers of all those fancies attached to it, is said to be the person who can reach this dhyana yoga. Here in this Atma Samyama Yoga or Dhyana Yoga, we get to know about Bahiranga Sadhanam, that is the general disciplines of how meditator should observe. Here, what we need to note is how a person can go from Pravritti Marga towards Nivritti Marga. For a seeker who wants to reach Dhyana Yoga, Karma Yoga is definitely said to be the means. But for those who have reached Dhyana Yoga, renunciation is said to be the means. Here, renunciation is the key word. We have to renounce, and then only we can reach that Dhyana Yoga, is what Swamiji says here, our verse says here. See, our Swamiji gives an example of a meal. See, once we are going to know that we are going to get a good food, we should not brood over that food, that we are going for we are going for a good meal, or we are going for a party, or that kind of brood or that kind of attachment should not be there. But at the same time, just suppose that somebody had promised gulab jamun and did not give that gulab jamun. At that particular time, one should not get wild that they have not got that gulab jamun. So it is both ways. You should not be worrying about you should not be brooding about for the food, and at the same time you should not go wild over not getting it. So basically you need to renounce all the sensual pleasures, and that is how mature mind does not either crave, will neither hate, and that is transcending, and that is vairagyam. Detachment is crucial, and this is the litmus test for inner growth. Here, and how is this karma yogi called as meditator? Karma yogi is neither agitated nor anxious, is not agitated about the past experience, is not anxious about the future, and his mind is fully available for the present task. Therefore, he has fully focused mind, and this fully focused mind is a mind in meditation. So, a karma yogi is following open eye meditation. Here is the verse says, Sankalpa Sannyasi, one who gives up worrying. And since he has renounced worry, he is called a renouncer. So one should not get attached, one should not crave for something, or one should not hate for not getting it. This renunciation is the marga to attain that particular dhyana yoga or the meditation thing. And when this time comes, this is very difficult to say. A person who is occupied in artha kama activities may find us this Vedanta, learning Vedanta is waste of time. So when that particular person gets to know about this part, that there is no uniform time and it cannot be stipulated. But once he gets that maturity, then he will find that nivritti marga, then renunciation comes, and that is the marga to attain this dhyana yoga. Thank you.
Thank you, Satya, for a clear elaboration of this particular verse. We go to Dr. Raksha. Raksha, you have a nice verse to tell us about. Your time.
Shri Gurubhyo Namah. Very oftenly quoted verse. Uddaret atmadatmanam natmanam avasadayet atmaiva hyatmano bandhuho atmaiva ripuratmanaha. Padaparichaya. Atmana, by oneself, that is by one's own effort. Atmanam, oneself. Uddaret, should lift. Atmanam, oneself. Na avasadayet, should not degrade. He, for Atma eva, one's own self, is Atmana bandhuhu, one's friend, and Atma eva, one's own self, is Atmana ripuhu, one's enemy. Lord Sri Krishna says the first discipline is samatvam, which he keeps mentioning right from the chapter 2nd. But here in this verse, Bhagavan Sri Krishna is introducing another important exercise of prayatnam or self-effort, that is using free will appropriately. Swami Paramarthananda has explained this very lucidly. Our scriptures accept the existence of free will for human beings, which is not there for animals or for the plant kingdom. Here itself there is a problem. There are people who say we are puppets in the hands of destiny. Everything is predetermined and do not want to accept free will at all. They are the fatalistic people. But all of us are born with prarabdha, which is of two types, the punya prarabdha and papa prarabdha. In a person with punya prarabdha, good destiny will influence his mind in such a way that he will accept free will. In this verse, Bhagavan Sri Krishna is addressing those fortunate people who have punya prarabdha and accept free will. Now the next question is, if there is free will, do you accept destiny in addition to free will, or free will only? According to our Shastras, free will and destiny both are present. Prarabdha is the result of our past actions, and free will is the course of action we choose to take because of our thinking and because of our buddhi shakti. When we accept both are present, then which one is more powerful? We cannot answer this because fate and free will are operating every time. They come together and their relative strength varies. Fate can be of variable intensity. It can be prabala, madhyama, or durbala. Prabala prarabdha is very powerful and free will is helpless in such situations. Madhyama prarabdha cannot be stopped, but the impact can be reduced. Durbala prarabdha can be wiped out with sufficient effort of prayaschitta karmas. Similarly, free will also can be casual or serious in approach. An astika who follows Vedic teaching believes that there is destiny and has an attitude that I take charge of my life. The four purusharthas, dharma, artha, kama, and moksha, are chosen, and we have to work towards them. They are goals, not gifts. Bhagavan Sri Krishna says, Arjuna, choose your future with your free will, and I am ready to help you. Lord helps only those who are willing to put forth the effort, which is clearly emphasized in this verse. Swami Vivekananda says, I define Astika as one who believes in himself or herself. There should be belief in God, gurus, and scriptures. Faith in all these are useful and valid when there is faith in oneself. As in Viveka Chudamani, Durlabam Trayamevaitat Devanugraha Hetukam Manushyatvam Mumukshutvam Mahapurusha Samshrayaha. One should constantly strive for Indriya Nigraha, Mano Nigraha, and uplift oneself. Contrary to this, if we indulge in Arishad repose of Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moha, Madamatsarya, he is deprived of the supreme fruit of human existence. Asurya nama te loka andena tamasavruta. So the very essence is Atmaiva Atmanah Bandhuhu and Atmaiva Atmanah Ripuhu. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Aksha, for a nice explanation of a very often quoted Gita verse, highlighting the importance of our use of free will to overcome fate. We will go to Dr. Jagdish. Dr. Jagdish, it is your time, sir.
Am I audible and the volume is sufficient, sir?
Yes, sir, very clear.
Okay, let me go, sir. Gurubhyo namaha. Bandhur atmat manas tasya yenat maivatmana jitaha anatmas tu shatrutve vartet atmaiva shatruvat. Shloka 1 to 4 in this chapter talks of the disinterested action, and Satyanarayana has beautifully elaborated the first shloka today, because the first shloka specifically states one has claim to the heights of yoga only when one has ceased all attachments, be it objects, actions, and even thoughts of the world. He gave a very juicy example of Jamun, as quoted by Paramarthananda. Now, that was 1 to 4. Now, coming from shloka 5 to 10, the next segment, Krishna is asking us to uplift ourselves if we want to be the God-realized souls. And Raksha, who covered it just now, realized that it is the cornerstone of the thought in these shlokas, uplifting oneself. She has laid the foundation for that also, for those thoughts and their evolution. So we come to shloka 5, which Raksha said, where Krishna has personified the ascent by saying, it is yourself, for yourself, of yourself, and by yourself. Then allow that you can progress. Now, having said about the mind being a friend and a foe, now Krishna brings in the action. So far, it was light and camera, and now it is action, to tell us that the self is like the genie in the bottle. To keep him bottled in the self, and you are safe. You let him out, he will devour yourself. In fact, coming to my own shloka, shloka 6, it is a play on the words of self or Atma, and let's see how it is. Atmanaha jitah Atma. Atmanaha is for the person, jitah Atma, who has conquered the mind. Atmanaha Atma Bandhu. For that person, mind is a friend. But, a big but, Anatmanaha Atma, those with unconquered mind, the Atma varteta shatruvat, the Atma remains like an enemy. Now, Swami Chidbhavananda beautifully simplifies this wordplay by two titles, base self and divine self. By the self, let's call it divine self, the person conquers the base self, all the lower desires and so on. But to him who has not conquered this base self, his own self acts as the enemy. The base and the divine are two mutually opposing natures at work, where one predominates, the other gets vanquished. It could be both ways. Where the body, mind, and senses are under perfect control, the divine nature prevails and pulls the man up. Progressively, he evolves into higher and higher and higher orders of existence. The lower mind is filled with rajas and tamas, the lowest of those qualities, which is nothing but passion and darkness. The higher mind is the most beautiful one, the sattva, or the purity. And that is what should overrule these lower ones. That matter of fact, Negative thoughts and resentment is like drinking poison and hoping that the other person dies. I'll conclude by making just two quotes. One by Ted Roosevelt of US presidency. Men are not prisoners of fate, but only prisoners of their own mind. And similarly, 500 years ago, Buddha in Dhammapada says, I have been insulted, I have been hurt, I have been beaten, I have been robbed. Misery does not cease by harboring all these above four thoughts in our mind over and over and over again. In the next three verses, Krishna will speak of the features of the advanced yogi, Yogi Arudaha, which will be taken up by the subsequent speakers. Over, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jagdish, for a very poetic description of this beautiful verse and how, if the mind is properly trained, can be your friend. Otherwise, you can be your enemy to your own self. We enjoy all these verses in comparison to Upanishad, which we heard yesterday, which was so lofty and intellectual. Each of these verses are so simple, down to earth, and transformative in their message. Sudha Murthy, it is your time.
Hari Om. Am I audible, Doctor?
Very clear. Please go ahead.
So, as we have seen, that this chapter is dealing with. So here, Lord Krishna is giving few Bahiranga Sadhanani, that is the disciplines which one has to follow throughout the day, so that when one sits for the meditation, the mind is on anything which we are meditating upon. So let us see what this shloka is giving us. Few that is disciplines, that is go say. Jitatmana means the person who has conquered himself. Atma doesn't mean the supreme consciousness or Brahman.
You may have to put off your camera. Sudha, can you put off your camera? The audio is not coming clear. Put off your camera and
Okay, Doctor, now. Okay. So, Doctor.
Sudhaman, put off your camera. Only audio you keep on.
Yes, only audio I have kept it on, Doctor. Now.
Go ahead.
Only
Better,
audio.
better.
Is it okay?
Better. Yes, better.
So here, it means the person who has conquered, who has mastered his mind, body, complex. And what is the proof that a person has mastered this? That is Shantasya. The person who is whose mind is not turbulent. And this can take place only when one has conquered or managed. What is management? Because the management comes only when we are managing 2-3 things at a time. That is body, mind, intelligence. That is the intellect. This body, mind, and intellect. As we have seen in Kathopanishad, the Rajalpana is authority. All the others should fall in line. If there is no proper coordination and coordination, these things, so my art for something and the intellect for something else, it goes in a different direction. That mind is not good enough or fit enough to sit for meditation. So here self-effort, that is our effort, our prayatnam is needed. With that, the Guru Kripa, Guru Grip, as well as Bhagavadanugraham also, we get through that. So this is very well explained in this stanza. And also, Paramatma Sahinaha, for that, we calm, quiet, equipoised, everything that is evident, is evident. And when we are in that supreme consciousness, that is, we will be connected to that higher self, then Shiroshna Sukhadukeshu. So the pairs of opposite will not affect you. Will not be affected The mind is calm, it's not regulated. And Sri Roshna, that didn't see either is the part. And Anma Yoga is very important. It's like honor. To even some is we don't. And the play in our mind. That it's not meditation. So only conquering for self, for all these aspects, one should have self, one should have self-confidence and master over mind. This is not like it's
Sudha, thank you. Thank you for your presentation. Unfortunately, there was some audio problem, so we were not able to hear very clearly. Thank you very much. I hope it will improve in the subsequent presentations. Vasanta, please go ahead.
Suhrun Mitra Aryud, sorry. Suhrun Mitra Aryud Dasina Madhyastha Dveshya Bandhushu Sadhushwapi cha Papeshu Samabuddhir Vishishyate. This sloka is actually explaining how a jnani deals with different types of people. So we'll start with Suhrut. So Suhrut is a person who's good-hearted. Mitra is a friend. Ari is an enemy, and especially the backstabbing type of enemy. Udasina is a person who just is so totally indifferent to people. Madhyastha is a person who tries to mediate when people are having trouble between each other. And Dveshya is a person who's very hateful. He's full of hatred. And Bandhu is a relative. Sadhu is a noble person who follows the dharma and lives a life of values. And a papi is a person who lives a life of adharma. So the Samabuddhi, that is the jnani who has equanimity, he deals with all these people exactly the same way, in the sense of he treats them all the same way. And that is why he is the highest. He's liberated, and he's visishyate, so he is considered superior to everyone. So now I'll go into more details about this. This sloka actually echoes the Vidya Vinaya Sampanne sloka in chapter 5. And the main aspect here is samatvam. How this equanimity, how is this jnani able to have this equanimity, and what is it? I mean, what is his view towards people and life? So there are two angles here that we are looking at. One is the philosophical angle, and that is that the jnani looks at every human being as that their true nature, their Atma Swarupam is full of, it's innately good, noble, and saintly. And he looks at all the differences that are there in the people as anatma. So the base of the person is pure, and everything else you see is anatma. And so all crimes he looks at as incidental impurities. There's a beautiful Shankaracharya. Shankaracharya story from Viveka Chudamani, where he talks about, if you have a wet piece of sandalwood that's been left out in the water and it collects moss, then if somebody comes and looks at it, they will look at it like it's, oh my God, this is something smelly to be thrown away. But if they were to realize that inside is sandalwood, then they just have to, remove the outer layer of the moss, and then they're able to get the fragrance back again. And that's the way the jnani looks at every human being. And it's also a mother-like way, like, every mother looks at a child as being pure and beautiful. And, she may chastise the child if the child has something wrong. And so same way the jnani can do that. But that vatsalyam that the mother has, that's the kind of spirit with which the Jnani looks at every person in the world. The other aspect that about Samatvam is also that the Jnani has come to the point where he is free from raga and dvesha. So being free from raga and dvesha, which is attachment and hatred, he has no pining for for being with somebody or not being with somebody. And so he has no dependence on any of the people. And so he has this freedom. So I think the crux of the thing that I understood is that he acts always, he never reacts to anything. Thank you. I'm done.
Thank you, Vasanta. That was a very nice explanation based on Swami Param's explanations. And for those who do not know Vasanta, she was speaking to us from the United States, possibly from California.
Gnana Vignana Truptatma Kutastho Vijitendriyaha Yukta Ityuchyate Yogi Samaloštashma Kanchanaha. Let's start with a bit of a recap from chapter 3, because in chapter 3, verse number 41, Lord Krishna tells Arjuna that Kama is a sin and it is an obstacle for both Gnana and Vignana. Gnana, Vignana, Nashanam. So to conquer Kama, 3 things are required, namely Damaha, Samaha and Vivekaha. Damaha is Indriya Nigraha, and then we work on thoughts and then the intellect. Now this verse, number 8, is about phalam of self-knowledge and deals with the Samatvam principle with regards to Jada Prapancha. The 9th verse will deal with the Chetana Prapancha. Gnana and Vignana are 2 steps to attain self-knowledge. Gnanam means knowledge. A student learns about Atma and Anatma with the help of a guru. He therefore identifies himself with the body-mind complex first, but admits to having Atma within. It is therefore Paroksha Gnanam. For example, he will say, I am the body and I have consciousness. And so he is still identifying with the body-mind complex. Vignanam means wisdom. Over a period of time, through his own experience of things, he realizes the true nature of Atma. Therefore, this is Aparoksha Gnanam. Swamiji uses the example of spectacle, i.e., I'm not the spectacle, but use it when required. Similarly, body is only an incidental tool that I use for transaction. This shift from identification with the lower bird to upper bird is transformational and is only possible with meditation. This realization that I am the conscious principle, Nityaha, Satyaha, Ekaha and Sarvagataha, changes the whole perspective of the world. So when one elevates himself by turning attention from changing thought aspect of the mind to changeless consciousness, sense of limitation disappears. He is Truptatma, one who is free from fears of growing, graying and going, which is called samsara. He is therefore Kutastaha, meaning he is unshaken by any event. Lord Krishna explains that self-knowledge is the best armor, which is like kavacham against unpredictable events. Yukta ityuchyate yogi. Such a wise person is called yogi. And what type of a mind he has? Samalostashma kanchanaha. Losta is mud, asma is stone, and kanchanaha is gold. For a yogi, they're all the same. That is, he is free from raga and dvesha, and there is samatvam. He is purnaha and sees the world as mirror of himself. Hari Om.
Thank you, Dr. Prasanna. In spite of the little interruptions, you were able to get back and clearly explain this particular verse. We will check with Dr. Rupa. Are you with us, Dr. Rupa?
Seems to be online, but she is not reachable.
Sir, yes, sir. Sir, this Mamta, she's online. She's, I think, having some issues unmuting. She's going to be back online.
All right,
She's trying unmute.
Unmuted.
Shall we proceed to Dr. Padma Baliga and then come back to Dr. Rupa?
So I'm ready.
Okay, we come back, Dr. Rupa.
Okay.
Is it Dr. Rupa or Dr. Padma?
Hello?
So this is Padma speaking. If Dr.
If you-
Rupa is not ready, I can start.
Please start. Please start.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Shucho deshe pratishtapya sthiram asanam atmanah nathi uchritam nathi nicham chaila jina kushottaram. In a clean spot, one should firmly fix one's own seat, which consists of a cloth, a skin, and kusha grass, one over the other, and which is neither too high nor too low. So verses 10 to 15, 10 I think Dr. Rupa will be speaking about now. These are about antaranga sadhana, that is disciplines specific to the act of meditation. They detail the 8 steps to take before beginning meditation. Verse 11, which I am speaking on, is a simple verse, and I shall quickly explain the word meanings. Shucho is clean, deshe is land or place, sthiram pratishtaya is to firmly fix, atmanaha is one's own seat, asanam. Chaila, ajina, and kusha are a cloth, a skin, that is a deer skin, and kusha grass. Uttaram is to keep one over the other. Na ati uchritam is which is not too high. Na ati nicham is not too low. So in the earlier shloka, it was said, rather Dr. Rupa will be saying that one should sit in a secluded spot. In this shloka, Krishna talks about where and how to sit down for meditation. The emphasis is on creating a space free of gross external dirt, for one cannot meditate unless there is external cleanliness as well as inner spiritual cleanliness. A shucho deshe, or a clean place, is important, for dirt or insects can distract us. Swami Param says the place where we sit to meditate should invoke only religious or spiritual thoughts in our mind. So he advises that we choose either a naturally sacred place or that we make it sacred by lighting a lamp, keeping pictures of Mahatmas or Devatas, keeping the writings of great people, for such actions will ennoble the spot. Next comes the seat. It should be stable, not too high or low. For a stable seat will mean that there is no fear of falling down, and this will lend it to a stable mind. There is another subtle point being made here, that one should sit down to meditate. Now one may ask, why can't I meditate when I'm standing or when I'm sleeping? It is possible. However, meditation requires the cultivation of sattvic tendencies, and it is said that sleeping could lead to tamasic thoughts, while standing could lead to rajasic thoughts, and which is why it is better to sit down. Creating a stable seat in an organized manner, by first placing this and then that, makes it easier to calm the mind of distracting thoughts and to bring it to a point of single focus. Now, the references to cloth, deer skin, and kusha grass, chaila, jina, and kusha, placing these on the seat. Now, this has been explained as a way to insulate ourselves from extreme heat or cold. But in today's world, I think we can read this as a suggestion to stay connected to nature. In a world of plastic and virtual reality, we become distant from nature and we forget our connection to the natural world and that we are only a part of it. During yesterday's presentations on the Brahmavalli, we learned that human beings were created only after space, air, fire, water, earth, herbs, and food were created. We come from nature, we are sustained by nature, and we return to nature. Without Agni, Vayu, Akasha, we are nothing. The kusha grass and deer skin symbolically remind us of our connection with the natural world. Only when we respect our surroundings, the animal and the plant world, and ensure that there is cleanliness in the natural world, only then can we attain cleanliness of mind and spiritual cleanliness. Also, our world is full of consumerism and materialism, And Swami Param tells us that the deer skin for the Vedantin student was both his dress and his seat. It is thus a reminder to not have too many possessions, to practice aparigraha, to reduce possessions, and when we have minimum possessions, to give up the sense of ownership and acquire a sense of trusteeship. Today, Dr. Hegde mentioned this as part of POT, that we all need to work on possessions. Hari Om, and thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Padma. Very clear, very nice. We enjoyed it because it was a simple verse, but you did full justice to every word and every significance of each of these verses.
Yogi yunjita satatam atmanam rahasi stitaha ekaki yata chittatma nirashir aparigraha. So the previous verses dealt with Bahiranga Sadhanani, and there were two verses which described the ultimate goal. It's like a trophy verse, which are actually not in the sequence, but probably for us to continue our studies to see eventually where we can reach. And after those two verses, we now come to Antaranga Sadhanani, which follow Patanjali's methods more or less. And in this verse, yogi is a spiritual seeker. So this chapter is basically a person who has achieved Chitta Shuddhi to Karma Yoga and Upasana Yoga, who has completed Shravana Mananam, but has got Jnanam, but that Jnanam has not yet become a Nishta. This chapter is using the tool of Nididhyasanam to push this knowledge from the conscious mind to the subconscious mind, so that knowledge is converted to emotional strength, which is available to me at the time of crisis when I'm likely to react. So that being the case, we are moved from Bahiranga Sadhanani to Antaranga Sadhanani. So this yogi is such a seeker. He is in that stage where Shravana Mananam is over and he is now doing Nididhyasanam. Can I see the verse, sir?
Yes.
Yunjita satatam. Satatam means constantly or continuously. Yunjita. So he is going to engage. Atmanam here refers to his mind. So yogi yunjita satatam means he is about to go about his meditation, which is Nididhyasanam. And what are the circumstances of doing this Nididhyasanam are being described. Rahasi sthita. Rahasi sthita means it should be a secluded place, so that there is no distraction for him. Ekaki means he does this alone. Although today we practice meditation in a group. Yata chittatma. So one of the Antaranga Sadhanani is that he should have mastered his mind through Indriya Nigraha and Mano Nigraha. Nirashir aparigraha. So Nirashir means without any desires. So there is this description of two opposing words like yoga and kshema. So yoga is to acquire and then kshema is trying to preserve. So Swami Param says Nirashir is trying to get things, and then aparigraha is then spending a lot of time in trying to preserve what has acquired. So these two things then rob one of spiritual time, and then he is worried about these things when he is sitting for meditation also. So this is the meaning of this verse. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Sundar, for being able to pitch in and yet do such a clear explanation of the verse with a short moment's notice. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha Sarve Santu Niramayaha Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschid Dukkha Bhag Bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.